And about that time, I heard some calling coming from behind me, and I knew immediately it was not a turkey. The rhythm was horrible, and the sound was a little off. So we had trespassers. So I told Keith, I said, stay put. I can get out of here without being seen. I'm going to go run them off or go catch them. One of them comes up here, kill him. Don't worry about me.
The trespasser or the turkey?
The turkey.
Okay.
The turkey. So,
let's clarify that.
Yeah, I'll clear that up.
Take his kneecaps out.
I don't like trespassers, trust me, but I'm not going to shoot one of them.
Keith killed a guy.
This segment of DoD TV is brought to you by Leupold, American to the core.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drury Outdoors 100% Wild podcast. We are officially not your favorite outdoor podcast.
That's right. Powered by DeerCast. You're Tim Chelsvik.
You are the birthday boy, Matt Drury.
Woo woo.
41 years young.
Yeah, old enough to not even remember my age. This morning I had to stop by and get some gas on the way to work. And my first birthday present of the day was our great president giving me a $115 bill to fill up my tank. It's like, oh,
that hurts.
It's the most I've ever had to fill up the tank. So,
what does your gas station? Do they also sell Effordent?
No, not that I know of.
Okay, just wondered. You start to worry about these things.
Old man joke.
Yeah,
from an old man. What the hell are you saying? You're older than I am.
Well, maybe an age.
Yeah. Well, somebody on Instagram sent me a instant message this morning and said something about. I'm catching Old Man Junior. They put Old Man and then
Yes.
Junior. I'm catching up to Terry. I got a long way to go.
You're his Jedi.
That's right.
Padawan. Yeah. Well, we've got Hall of Famer Chris Parrish on. We're still talking turkeys. This week has been all about turkeys. Matt Van Cise earlier in the week, and now we got Chris Parrish.
That's right. So, and I don't know how up to date this is, but we did this for Matt. I want to do it for Chris here. So here's some of the accomplishments before we jump on with them. 11 Grand National Championships, 10 World Championships, 3 U.S. Open Championships, 4 Mid-America Open Championships, 1 North American Open Championship, 10 Missouri State Championships. This guy's a champion.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
All right. Without further ado.
What's up, man?
Hey, how you guys doing this morning?
We're good. Did we miss any of the accolades there?
No, that's fine. Good enough.
Handsome.
Oh, shit. We
Archer.
forgot the most important. I know.
So all I add is old.
One of the probably the biggest feathers in the cap, you've been with Night and Hail for a long time, right? Isn't that kind of the cherry on top?
You got some audio problems.
We got some audio problems?
Oh, there it went. Yeah, you're good.
So what I was saying was, one of the cherries on top, I would think, would be your tenure, your longtime tenure there at Night and Hail. Is that kind of the dream job, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really fun ride. You know, I was with them, I guess, overall for around 25 years, you know, until everything was dissolved with Pradco. And it was phenomenal. You get the chance to hunt with Harold and David and spend that time at the cabin and traveling around with him. I spent a lot of hours in a truck with Harold. He sleeps a lot, but
sounds like Terry.
just great times, you know, and I wouldn't take anything in the world for it. You know, those guys are just golden. I think everybody in the industry, they look up to those guys as kind of being the pioneers and how they treated people as well. Just great people.
Certainly. And so these days you're with Bear Archery, correct?
Correct.
Yep. So you've kind of gone from iconic brand to another iconic brand, right?
Yeah. I guess that's what old people do, right?
So, you know, we were talking turkey this week. Like we said, we had Matt Van Cise on earlier. And, you know, when we list out, you know, all the championships that held between the two of you guys, it's just incredible to think, you know, how competitive you guys have been for so long. What to you in your mind, what's the key to being able to stay competitive year after year after year when some of these young guys coming up are just ridiculous callers? They're so talented.
Well, I think a lot of it is work ethic. You know, it's like anything else in this world. If you want something bad enough, you go after it and you stay on top of your game. And that's what I did. I probably took a lot more time away from the family than I should have. But I would go to my office, you know, the shop, and you'd been there, Matt, you know,
Yep.
and I'd go there and I would spend hours recording and then listening to hens and then recording myself and trying to match. You're not going to sound like every hen, but there's particular turkeys that you sound like, and you build up to that. And I remember the day that I kind of really hit it on the head, even though I had won several beforehand. And I brought the video recording home, and I plugged it into the TV, and I took my wife and I made her turn her back, and I played the live hen, and then I played myself, and she goes, "That's the same person." Or the same turkey. And I'm like, "No, it's not." I said, "It's me calling and the hen calling." I said, "I think I've got it figured out." And I think that's what these young guys, they have a bonus compared to what myself, Mark, Matt even had coming up through the ranks, because there wasn't YouTube, there wasn't all these live recordings of hens. And if you wanted something, you'd had to research or go out and do it yourself, and you had to work harder to get there. Where now, not that they're not working hard, but they're just more readily available. And I figured when I got to 2013 and I had won what I won and I'd accomplished what I accomplished, and kind of a funny story, I was at the World Championships. I still placed in it. I had placed in the top 3 or 4 at the Grand. I had won the Mid-America again, I guess. I several things, and I ended up winning a World Team Championship that day. But I remember as I was up there, a guy called for the next call, and I was getting ready to switch calls, and I kind of went, "What did he just say?" So my mind wasn't in the game anymore.
Oh, no.
And when you start getting into the point where your mind's not in the game and you're starting to think about things that you're not focused on, like I was thinking about family, I was thinking about going home, thinking about work that needed to be done, it's time to kind of go, "You know what? I've had a good ride. I'll dabble a little bit. I'll still do some team calling here and there. I'll still have some fun with the guys. And I'm always going to go back and visit people at the contests. It's a great time. It's a family." But you realize that you run your course and you're done. These young guys coming up, they've just, I don't know as I would call it taking it to the next level, because I think all of us are capable of doing whatever we need to do, but they're young, their minds are young and sharp, and their work ethic is good, and they're going to have some longevity. Chris, look at Matt. He's not giving up. He keeps hanging in there. He's done a wonderful job.
Yeah.
Chris, I'm curious, when you did that calling comparison for your wife, how much did she swoon when she realized that was my husband?
You're one with the turkey now.
I wouldn't go so far as she swooned over that. She thought it was good. But, the thing about it is Kathleen's hunted with me for years, and she never hunted a day in her life. So she got to listen and hear a lot. Of course, she went to all the contests and everything, and she had a really good ear. And not everybody has an ear for things. It's no different than music. Turkey sounds is no different than a guitar or a piano. I mean, you get an ear for it. And guys that get an ear for it, they can be in the woods, and it takes a special caller to fool their ear. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to fool the judge's ear and hope that he has the ability to know what kind of picture you're painting and what kind of music you're playing.
Now, coming full circle, Tim mentioned it at the top there that you were recently inducted into the NWTF, the Hall of Fame. I mean, is that to come full circle like that? And we joked, off camera about it, but I mean, that's got to be pretty special to you. I mean, that's a hell of an accomplishment.
Yeah, it is. It's the pinnacle, really. I mean, when you look back, holding that Grand National trophy over your head and finally accomplishing and, beating guys like the likes of Mark and Walter Parrott and those guys, that was fantastic. That's a little feather in your cap. But to go full circle and to be at the end of the rainbow, and you're a Hall of Famer now, not compared to golf, but kind of like that, where you ran your course, you did your job, you set a precedence by which a lot of people followed, and now you finally have accolades for it. It's a great feeling.
Good deal. So are you, I know, there was a time where you were making a lot of calls, just for, the things that people would be buying in the store. You're kind of behind the scenes there making a lot of that stuff. Are you still involved on that side of things?
Yes, I am. I sure am.
Yeah. Who are you making calls for right now?
We build Phelps and Meat Eater stuff. We build a lot of stuff for the Grind, and we also build a lot of stuff for Bone Collector.
I think that's kind of the, I guess the secret's out, but I mean, I think that's kind of an interesting thing, because there's a handful of guys that make a bunch of calls for a bunch of different companies, and they're all very accomplished, callers, and they know they've been doing it for decades. They really know their stuff. So, it's interesting when you get a call like that, you're typically getting a call that, a championship call maker.
So the problem isn't the call, it's me.
That's right. The problem isn't the call, it's the caller.
It's made by someone who knows what they're doing.
That's right.
User error.
Yeah. So, I mean, how many calls in a year do you think you're pumping out still?
Oh, over 100,000, 125,000.
Yeah, it's not a little. It's a lot, So it's pretty cool. I always found that fascinating personally, and and I think of guys like Tad Brown and and John Williams, guys that we know, throughout the team here, and they made a lot of calls in their lives too. But there's a handful that make them on the mass scale here for the whole industry.
Back in the day, if I've heard correctly, a lot of the latex that the guys were using for their calls was coming from prophylactics.
Yeah.
That's just kind of fun, like going and buying a bulk of condoms.
They're like, what the hell is this guy up to? No, Tad used to make all the mad calls back in the day in Mark's basement in Columbia. He lived there in Mark and Tracy's house for the longest time. We've talked about that on air before, but pretty funny. So humble beginnings.
Yeah. Chris, when I think about championship turkey callers and I think about guys that are just really good at calling, I assume that they're also great turkey hunters. Have you ever encountered, and we don't need names, but is it possible for someone to be a great caller but maybe not so great of a turkey hunter?
Well, I think, it's definitely possible. I mean, there's no question. I think depends on how you started. Some guys start their calling career as callers. So, they've turkey hunted a little bit, but they got interested in calling. And I know a few of those guys, and they became pretty good callers before they came. Now, they became really good hunters because they could make the calls, but they needed time and experience in the woods. And I kind of grew up opposite. I started turkey hunting when I was a little bitty type with my dad. Actually started in the fall of '79. That gives you an indication how long I've been turkey hunting.
Tim.
And I turkey hunted until 1983, and then I became really interested in calling. And the reason why I became interested in calling, I thought, I'm getting good at killing turkeys, but I don't know how to communicate with them. So I want to really communicate on a higher level. So that's what got me really interested in calling and started building my own calls and started trying to figure things out. And I think then you start what I call becoming really dangerous as a turkey hunter, because there's not a lot of things you can't figure out. And there's not a lot of things that the turkey does that you don't really have a handle on, and then your calling, as it becomes better, I think you understand what you're saying to the turkey a lot of times. It's no different than knowing when to grunt to a deer, right? You can read his body language, what's right and what's not right. You can tell that with a gobble. You can tell that how a turkey's reacting, and you put those combinations together and it makes a pretty deadly scene.
When you have a turkey coming in, I'm curious, like as you're visually reading him, what do the different colors of his head typically mean to you? Do you even look at that to see what his attitude is?
Oh, sure, absolutely. You can tell by the way he's strutting, and you can, a lot of times you can tell a younger bird, like a 2-year-old turkey, from an older turkey, because a lot of times a 2-year-old turkey, he'll get in a trance strutting. And an older bird will be strut, walk, look, strut, walk, look. He's looking for what's making the sound. Head colors, absolutely. You get a turkey that's got a head that's red. That's usually a aggravated type look. You'll see them a lot of times coming into a fan or a strut and gobbler decoy, and that head's changing colors as it's coming in, and you can see that there's some aggression there. Or you get a relaxed turkey that's just strutting for a hen decoy or strutting for a hen, and he'll just be all blued up. His head will be kind of that pale blue, and he's just totally relaxed. And you can tell that. You can tell what you're saying to that turkey. And I think a lot of that has to do with just where they're at in the breeding cycle as well. When they're really peak breeding and they're strutting hard for hens, they've got that kind of more bluish type head to them. But, you start decoying a turkey and you're dealing with a gobbler decoy or fanning, you'll see that anger come out in them. So yeah, there's a lot of things turkeys do body language. One of the things I cued in on years ago was when a turkey was getting ready to leave, generally that head will come up and they'll kind of turn and they'll pop those wings. They'll snap those wings back, and that's usually a good indication of I've kind of had enough. The gig is up. I'm getting ready to leave. So, and that comes with experience, guys. People aren't going to learn that without spending time in the woods.
So, decoy strategies, what, is it time of year dependent? The other day, Dad and I were talking, and he said something like, the turkeys really gobbled well the other morning. He was at the farm. The turkeys were gobbling really well. And he said they'll be gobbled out by the time season gets here. And it made me think, like, he talks about that kind of stuff. And guys like you guys know kind of the cycle of what the breeding season and how they're going to play, before the turkey season even gets there, it seems like. So what phase, we talk about phases in deer hunting. Are there certain phases during the turkey season that you look at and say, this decoy is going to work for this setup this time of year, or even weather dependent, maybe a cold, rainy day versus a high pressure bluebird day? I mean, what's your strategy as you go into it?
Well, I think early season, and I'll go by like early, mid, and late season and kind of keep it simple here. And this is my thought process and the years of experience I have. Early season, typically you still have that vibe for dominance. Okay, so, they're split up. Obviously, it all depends on how spring hits. You could have an early spring or late spring, and we all know weather has a lot to do with how, that goes. I mean, we continue to get snows in March and early April. We're going to have kind of a later spring, or at least a spring that kind of hits maybe online. But I tend to use a gobble if I'm using decoys, and I don't use them a lot, but in open field situations where I think the turkeys can see them, and I'm not going to be like having a turkey pop over the hill and all of a sudden he's looking at a decoy, kind of a spooky situation. I like having a gobbler decoy or a Jake decoy with a hen and play off of that dominance factor. They're still kind of vying for that dominance. They're still trying to be the bad boys on the block. Mm-hmm. This kind of works on that psyche, if you will. We get into that peak breeding mode. I really would rather use strictly a hen decoy, and sometimes I'll pair it with a Jake decoy. And this all depends on whether I've had a good Jake hatch. If I've got a lot of Jakes on a farm I'm hunting, I do not like to use a Jake decoy, because a lot of times, those Jakes, they like to gang up and they want to be little playground studs, and they'll run a gobbler off. So I'll use that, I'll weigh that option, and then I'll use it if I think it's a valid choice. If it's not, then I'll go back to just a hen or a couple of hens, maybe a feeding hen and a standing hen. That's
what I was going to ask you, if it mattered, a breeder, a feeding, or what type of hen during that middle section there.
Yeah, I always try to go more into the relaxed mode, because a lot of times in that what I call the peak breeding time, you're dealing with a lot of turkeys that are, they're generally with hens, right? So if you've got a lot of turkeys that are with hens, I really don't want to. I want to keep the situation relaxed, if you will. Okay. Now I get into the later part of the season. Most of the hens are bred. They're on the nest now. Things are starting to slack up a little bit, but the gobblers, kind of like this, as we trickle down in the rut, the gobblers are still looking, and they're going to have that period where things are, they're going to be a little more vulnerable. At that point, I may go back to, depending on whether I'm dealing with what I think is subdominant birds or dominant type birds, I may go back to a gobbler type decoy or a Jake type decoy. But then I will go in that phase and use like a feeding hen and maybe a breeding looking hen, where I'm playing on his will of wanting those last few hens before, things run their course. And we all know weather has a lot to do with that. We've seen the trickle of bad weather, hens losing their nests. All of a sudden you get into June, for crying out loud, and season's over and turkeys are gobbling and strutting with hens because they're trying to rebreed. So, it all depends on the cycle, and that cycle it's a guess most of the time, because we don't know how the season's going to wind up.
Okay, so you said you typically don't use a lot of decoys when hunting. This strategy kind of fascinates me to a certain degree, because it's like, I think a lot of hunters nowadays have relied a little more heavily on decoys, and they're so realistic that they are really effective. So say you're a guy that's going out there, you're relying solely on your woodsmanship, your ability to call a turkey. Are there certain sounds that you're wanting to go out to? Are you getting aggressive, or like, how are you going about it? Obviously you probably roosting the night before, trying to understand where they're at, and maybe getting up underneath them or getting close to them and trying to have success right out of the gate in the morning. What's your strategy there when you go without decoys?
Well, generally I will roost one, or I will have done a good job of scouting and have a real good general idea of the basic locations of where the turkeys are roosting at. And if you do a really good job of scouting, say, for example, you roost one the night before, and I don't have the time to do it like I used to, but I used to get really nutcase about roosting, like literally try to figure out the exact tree the turkey was in. And especially when they're henned up, I love to set up on a turkey 60, 70 yards away and just be in his wheelhouse. And a lot of times it's just a couple of clucks. They fly down in your face 25 yards. Obviously, not filming. Filming is a whole different game. You know that filming can actually create a really good scenario for a turkey to get out of there without getting shot up by the turkey. You know how that works. But I like to get really tight on them. I like to listen to him in the morning, drumming on the limb. I like to hear all the sounds of the morning. And then, when his feet hits the ground, give him a couple of seconds to look around and take his last breath. But there's a lot of different scenarios there. And I'll back up and say this. When it comes to decoys in an open field situation, now have I killed a lot of turkeys in open fields without decoys? Yeah, because I just didn't have them with me. Obviously we all have. But generally, if I'm hunting timber and it's not open timber, it's fairly thick timber, and I don't have log roads, I don't have situations where I think the turkey can see that decoy at a distance, I tend to shy away from decoys. I hunt Kansas a lot. You know how Kansas is. It's fairly open country. Even in eastern Kansas, there's still a lot of open country. I've always got a decoy or two in the bag at that point, because you always get caught where you're dealing with an open field turkey. One thing I always carry with me is a fan. I always carry a real fan. I build them every year and split them to where I can fold them up and put them in my vest where I can pop them out, because a lot of situations, I've worked turkeys and worked turkeys and worked turkeys and nothing works. And you've got him right on that hinge, but he's not coming, and to flip that fan out at him, and in 10 seconds, he's laying on the ground flopping. So always carry those bag of tricks with you. But I love to hunt hardwoods. I love hearing a turkey gobble in the woods. I love watching him strut through the hardwoods coming to me. And if I had my preference, I'd rather hunt a turkey in the hardwoods than I would in the field, but we don't always have that choice. So that's why, and like, for example, that place there in Mexico that we hunted, had a lot of timber on it, and you could always get on a turkey in the woods. And I always loved watch them strut down those ridges and stuff. And I just didn't use decoys there, because mainly I felt if I stuck a decoy out in those woods, there's a lot of undulations. A lot of times the turkeys don't see them, and then when they do, they're almost in gun range, and they're just the decoy's in their face immediately, right? Yeah. And I think the scenario and I've watched turkeys do this. Well, they'll come in and look at it, and all of a sudden they kind of get that, like, where'd that come from? And there's a little bit of that hesitation sometimes. And I've seen turkeys spook off of it, especially if it was a strutting gobbler decoy. How many times have you had a strutting gobbler decoy out in the field with a hen, and the turkey, he'll take 15 minutes to figure out and make his mind up whether he wants to come in there and attack that turkey or not, you know? And if that's in his face, and all of a sudden, say he's 60 yards in the woods and the decoy's 25 yards from you, and he comes up over that hill, and all of a sudden that strutting gobbler decoy is in his face, that can turn the switch off just as easy as it can turn it on.
Yeah. Chris, you talked about popping the fan open, like when you're sitting there in the timber. What are you actually doing? I assume you're sitting up against a tree. Are you just kind of sitting there with it in your lap, and are you turning it? Like, what are you doing to make that effective?
I always have it set, I always take it out and set it by me, make sure it's right there by me, and I'll unfold it. Just set it on the ground and unfold it. It's obviously sitting on the ground. Turkey's not going to notice it. And I'll just wait till he's got his back turned, wait till he's in a position where you can move, or the turkeys are in a position where you can move a little bit. It doesn't take much. When you just grab it, and I'll just grab it in my hand, and then I'll just flip it up, and then, give him a little bit of motion. His focus is going to be on the fan. How many times have we watched people, throw the fan up in front of them and basically walk to a turkey in an open field? Yeah. When you're sitting there and you flip that fan up and you give it a little bit of movement, all of a sudden his focus gets all that. He's not looking at you. we give them credit for being super intelligent. They're sharp birds. They're sharp birds because they're scared of every daggum thing that moves. It's not that their brain's as big as your little finger here. It's not like they're smart, but don't be afraid to do things because it can make a difference between being successful and not successful. And I've learned that if you just, watch it, do it at the right time, man, it can change things on a dime. I'm a pretty aggressive hunter, very aggressive hunter actually. But that has to do with my time. People don't have time to hunt. You've got to be aggressive if you want to make things happen.
Yeah, I think, Matt said the same thing. I know Mark's super aggressive. Terry's probably the one hunter that I've experienced hunting with that's a little less like, he's more of a, hey, sit and wait. We know, like you said about scouting, he knows where they're heading to.
Sure.
He doesn't do a lot of roosting anymore. He's owned his farm there in North Missouri for close to 20 years, and he kind of knows where they roost. He knows where they go, and anymore it's a matter of, sitting, having patience and kind of waiting for them
eventually
to, ambush them there as they're walking through. So he definitely, I think a guy like these competitive turkey callers that went through all the competitions that are all, they're very successful. They seem to have that aggressive edge to them. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's a mistake or that's by accident. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's part of the personality profile. Heck, if I could call like that, I would be like, moving and just trying to find any bird I can get within audio range.
Yeah. You mentioned you love sitting in the hardwoods and a lot of times there's not a decoy situation in there, and you love, watching them strut up through the hardwoods. There's not much better than a gobble in the hardwoods when they're close. Like it's amazing how loud it can be and how earth shaking it feels when you're within that range. Or the other one I love is like they're behind you or something, they start spitting and drumming and you're like, holy shit, he's close. I know he's close. He's here right here
it's like
somewhere.
The T-Rex is coming. You see the cup of coffee.
That's right. It's there's, I don't know, there's just not many feelings quite like turkey hunting. So guys that don't do it off there or haven't been hunting, they don't understand the allure, I don't think. But man, if you've experienced those types of hunts, it's pretty addicting.
It's one of those where like the optics of the turkey hunt don't really do it justice.
Yeah.
Like if I were just to watch a turkey hunt on TV, I'd be like, oh, that looks like fun. But when you do it and you experience them up close and personal, it's life-changing.
Especially if they're working, you know what I mean? If they're not gobbling, like it's pretty dang tough. Like there too, you got to rely back on your scouting and kind of knowing where they're heading. But when they're hush mouth, it makes it a lot not fun. I remember one time, man, this was probably 2 years ago. I took my son Cameron to Dad's, and we were. This was later in the season, so the birds weren't working that great. But it was a nice, pretty day, and we didn't have luck off the roost, so we started running and gunning. Just kind of trying to locate and call and hit kind of the edges, the fence edges and all that stuff. And we went around the whole property. And then towards the end, Dad, he'd get out of the buggy and he'd go to the fence line. He'd make a call, try to locate one, and nothing. And every time he did that, I was telling Cameron, he was probably 5 at this time. I said, no, you got to be quiet. We're listening for a gobble. And Dad called one more time, and Cameron had this really loud, audible sigh, like, and Dad turned around laughing. He's like, I agree. Let's go get breakfast. So
can't disagree with that.
That's right. So
Chris, April
9th
and 10th is the youth season here in Missouri. Do you have any special tips because it's 2 weeks before I think the season starts. So, or maybe a week before season starts. Is there anything that's unique about hunting that youth season that maybe you could help our listeners and viewers with that would help them get a little more success?
Well, I love, my son now is 18, so he's past that point, but, he killed his first turkey when he was, I think, 8 or 9. I can't remember which, but at any rate, the youth season I really like. I think it's timed about right. I think the turkeys are, you're still going to have, they're going to be henned up a little bit sometimes, but they're very responsive. They're gobbling good. If you catch good weather, things are really good. Great time to put a blind up and throw a decoy out in the little edge of an opening because they're going to be really vulnerable to that. Mm-hmm. You don't really have to be overly aggressive. I think the key in any of that, obviously, if you want a youth to be successful, is to get out and scout. figure out where the turkeys are roosting at, kind of what their daily routine is, because at that time of year, it's kind of like early season deer hunting. You know, they're kind of doing a little bit of the same things. They really haven't fully split up and really established their little pockets of where they're at on the farm, depending on the population, how big the farm is. So you can be really successful if you just spend some time scouting, you know, have you a blind, have you a couple decoys. And the one tip I would give, especially super young youth hunters, you know, you get a hunter that's 14, 15, 16 years old. They're a little bit different story. They've got a little bit more patience, but you get a 7, 8, 9-year-old child, you know, don't burn them out. Get out there. If things aren't doing good, go back for breakfast. Go walk around, have fun. Go try to find a mushroom or two. Have some rods and reels with you. Go find a little pond or something. Do a little fishing because, hey, youth season in Missouri, you get to hunt all day. I don't know how many times I've been sitting out there after 1 o'clock during the regular season when you can't hunt anymore and crappie fishing and turkeys start gobbling and you're like, geez, I wish we could go hunt right now. So, you know, have something to do, have something that's fun, and keep them interested, keep them out there, but don't burn them out on the hunt because then it becomes, you know, unattractive to them, and you don't want that to happen. You want them to have fun with it because all it takes is one good hunt, and they're hooked.
Mm-hmm.
When you go to locate the night before a hunt, what is the most, like, I wonder your take on this, because I hear Mark and Terry talk about it a lot. Like, guys, I think, make the mistake of doing a lot of calling before the season starts. Mm-hmm. You know, they're just, they're anxious or whatever. Maybe they want to hear a turkey gobble. They want to see what's on the farm, and they're calling a lot to their turkeys ahead of the season, which I don't know if that creates a burnout, so to speak, from the turkey's like perspective, or I don't know what that does to the turkey, but I know Mark and Terry always kind of frowned upon that. So what are you doing to go and try to locate the birds? Is it just a coyote holler? Is it a crow call, or are you actually calling, or what's your strategy there?
I'm in the same camp that Mark and Terry are. I don't like to call to them much. I just, I figure I'm going to be calling to them enough when it's time to call to them and time to kill one. So I kind of shy away from that. I do use owl hooters. I use crow calls. I use a coyote howler, especially when I think they're on the roost. And I know I don't like the coyote howl like if I'm going to be within 100 yards of a turkey on the roost. I think even though he's on the roost, it's not a big deal. But a lot of times you'll get him to gobble once and then he won't gobble at it again. So, but like if I'm just driving out there and it's getting close to dark and I know the turkeys are roosted, I'll just get up on a high spot and coyote howl, try to get one to gobble, and maybe 2 or 3 will gobble and I'll get a location on them. But if I'm down in there, and I do a lot of when I have time, kind of like I said, taking it to the next stage, I'll have done my preseason scouting and kind of locate those turkeys, like especially early in the morning, like slip in there early in the morning before work or on a weekend, say a Saturday morning, drive out, slip out there, you listen to a turkey gobble here or there, or Sunday morning. Season opens generally on a Monday in Missouri for the regular season. I'll have 3 or 4 birds located. No one kind of, all right, this bird's been roosting within 100 yards of this place. This bird's been, then I'll go in there and set down pretty close to that roosting location, not call or anything. I'll just sit there, have my binoculars on me, have a couple of locator calls. And a lot of times you'll see the turkey come in and fly up. You don't have to do anything. And now you've got him pegged. You're in the wheelhouse. And if you hunt public land, now you're the first one in there. You're setting up on the turkey in his wheelhouse, and you're probably going to have a much better chance than the guy that shows up late. So there's a lot of different ways of doing things. I don't knock the guy that wants to call to the turkeys, and locate them a little bit, but it's not something I want to do because my time is limited, especially now, on how much turkey hunting I can do. I want to keep them as fresh as I can keep them, and I don't want them to know what's going on until I decide that it's time for one of them to pay the sacrifice.
Sure. So speaking of time, if someone maybe can't get out the day or two before season starts to roost a bird, what is kind of the maximum amount of time away from season that you will try to roost a bird? Like, will they hop trees? And just, I guess speaking mostly about Easterns, but how much movement could there be in their roosting trees just before season starts?
Oh, there could be a lot depending on how the spring is. I mean, if breeding starts a little bit early, and let's say you've got hens that are already starting to go and lay, and drop eggs, Well, where they're doing that is not necessarily where they started out their breeding ritual at. So the turkeys can move on the farm. You know, they could be roosting. Let's say there's a creek that runs through there, and they're roosting on the south side, just below this ridge for 3 weeks in a row. Well, on the fourth week, all of a sudden, the hens are starting to nest. The gobbler has to look for more hens. He may be moving his territory. It's no different than a buck looking for, for does. I mean, they start moving around on that farm a little bit, so they can change a little bit. So you always want to try to, if you don't have time to scout, you don't have time to roost. My general rule of thumb is get into a spot where you can hear as much of that farm as you can possibly hear. So the highest spot that you can get on, whatever that case may be, but you want to try to hear as much of that farm as you can hear. And as the season progresses, obviously you've got more foliage, so you're not going to hear as far. What you can hear, right now, and what you're going to hear on April the 25th is probably going to be cut in half. So if I'm hearing a turkey at 400 yards today, I'm probably only going to hear him 100, 125 yards to 200 yards, at the end of April, the 1st of May.
Is that because they green up?
Because the foliage and the terrain features. I've had just a quick story. I was hunting in Indiana several years ago with David Dehart from Night and Hail. I mean, it's been years ago, back when I was a young man. And we were standing out on this little low log road, and a turkey was just absolutely ripping it up on this ridge. Well, this ridge had kind of a pretty sharp face feature to it. And as we got closer to that face feature to try to work around that ridge, you couldn't hear the turkey gobble anymore. And I wanted to stop and relocate the turkey and kind of get an idea exactly the direction we needed to go to get set up on the turkey so that we didn't bump him. And when I tried to locate him again, I was like, well, shut up. And then we'd go back out to the log road, and we did this twice, and we could hear him gobbling. And I'm like, David, we get underneath that face, the sound shut off, and it's going over our head, and we can't hear it. I said, we just need to push on up. We got right up to the edge of it, heard him gobble, went 20 yards, set up. 2 calls later, the turkey was dead in 5 minutes. So a lot of times, you can't hear as well, and then therefore, and that's another tip. You get later in the season, and the foliage is thick. If you hear a turkey and he sounds like he's 200 yards away, he's probably 100 yards away. You might want to be thinking about where your setup's going to be, because you might walk another 10 yards and all of a sudden you walk in the middle of something, you get spotted and things go south on you. So, and that's a learned process. You can't necessarily figure that out until you actually screw something up a few times, and then you figure it out and you quit doing it.
Yeah, that's the thing that always interested me hunting with Mark and Terry, because they got, like the guys that have done it for so long and are so good at it. They know, they have that instinct to know we got to sit down. We've gone far enough. We got to sit down. He's coming. And it's always funny to see how often they end up coming the rest of the way into your setup, especially when you're, in the mid morning, you're running and gunning or whatever. It's not, you're not on the roost. You're trying to kind of play a cat and mouse game with them. And I think that's what drew me into turkey hunting so much, because that's the fun part of it. Unlike a deer hunt where you're kind of stuck to your spot, unless you're spotting and stalking out west or something, you're going to a stand or a blind and you're sitting. It's so interactive, and I think for those that may have not tried it before, that's what hooks you in. Like there is that cat and mouse of, I heard him gobble, I got to get close. You stop calling, you can't get too close. Then you want to call again, and man, if he hammers right there, it's a mad scramble, and everyone's like, get down, and that's what draws you into turkey hunting, I think.
Big time, yeah,
definitely. I call it a chess game. It's a chess game, and sometimes you get the checkmate and sometimes they get the checkmate. But if, and you were talking about your dad talking about being patient. I think that's one thing that, especially a lot of younger hunters that get fairly good at calling really quick, don't realize is there's a time to be patient. There's a time when, there's a lot of days I've been out, and everybody has, that the turkeys, they may gobble 3 or 4 times on the roost, and you're not in their wheelhouse. They fly down, shut up immediately, or they fly down, they fly away from you, they fly down, they get with hens, they shut up, everything's done. And you're like, well, I'm not in the game anymore. Well, you're always in the game, and I think a lot of times we get up and we go looking for that special turkey, And if you don't have a lot of time to hunt, I get that, but you go looking for that special turkey that's going to gobble and come running in there and committing suicide. Well, you know what? That's not the case. Mm-hmm. That's not the case with every turkey. It's not going to happen. There's a time to sit down and be patient and let, your dad talking about knowing what the turkeys do. Well, they do have kind of a little bit of a established routine around the farm. Today they roost over here, they fly down, they go over here, and they make, Harold Knight used to say it well, they make their little milk run every day. And if you'll just wait on to make that milk run, pretty soon they'll stop at your house. And sometimes you just need to be patient and let them drop it off.
Yeah. So
there's a time for all of it. And it's the same thing, Matt, you guys, obviously everybody knows Mark and Terry and the crew and their deer hunting skills and everything. There's a time when they get very aggressive. They go right into the bedroom and they know they've got maybe a 1 day or 2 day time period of a kill window that things are right. And they would never do that any other time. They would stay completely away from it and steer completely clear of any situation,
Yep.
And I think that's the same thing you have to do with turkeys. There's a time to be aggressive and get after them. And that comes with experience and knowing that you can get by with it. And there's a time to sit down and relax and be patient with it and let them do their thing. And at the end of the day, I don't always look at it about killing the animal. Obviously, we want to be successful. But there's also times when sitting and being patient is a very big learning experience. Mm-hmm. You get to see things and witness things that you wouldn't have if you would have moved on. And then you put that in your hair-covered computer, and the next time you run into that same situation, you've got another bag of tricks to pull out of.
Chris, in your opinion, what's the level of spooked that you can commit on a gobbler before he's done for the day? I can't hunt him again.
Done for the year.
Yeah, asking for a friend.
I think that's a personality trait with every turkey. I've seen turkeys get shot at and missed and run off, and 30 minutes later they're gobbling, and you walk in there and change positions and you kill them, or you've spooked them and you change positions and you kill them. And then I've seen them run off, and, sometimes you don't hear them gobble for a couple of days. And I think that's a personality. I mean, I think it's just like personalities in deer. Some deer are fighters. Some deer don't want to fight. Some of the biggest deer in the country, they don't want nothing to do with being aggressive with another deer. And then you get a bully, 5.5-year-old, 140-inch 8-pointer. He wants to whoop everything on the planet. He's got little man syndrome. So turkeys have personalities just like every other animal or just like people. I'll give you a prime example. Keith Wallig and I, and you all know Keith Wallig.
Yep.
And Keith and I were turkey hunting a couple years ago. Well, I'll say it was near 4 years ago, because we had celebrated my 50th birthday at my house. And so the day after the celebration, he wants to get up and go turkey hunting. Uh-oh. So you can imagine, it was kind of it was a little bit of a tough time, but we went up and went turkey hunting, and we got on 3 gobblers. I kind of had a pretty good idea because I'd already killed my first turkey, and I had a pretty good idea where I thought it was a group of 3-year-olds is what I thought. There was 3 gobblers together. I'd seen them multiple times, and they've been roosting in this particular area of a bend of a creek. Sometimes one side, sometimes the other side. We went in and we set up on the turkeys, and literally we're probably within minutes of them popping up over the hill and us doubling. And I thought that would be really cool, because I'd never hunted with Keith as far as had a gun with me. Now I filmed Keith, but I'd never really hunted with him as far as him and I hunting and having an opportunity to possibly double or kill a turkey with each other, like that scenario. And about that time, I heard some calling coming from behind me, and I knew immediately it was not a turkey. The rhythm was horrible, and the sound was a little off. So we had trespassers. So I told Keith, I said, stay put. I can get out of here without being seen. I'm going to go run them off or go catch them. One of them comes up here, kill him. Don't worry about me.
The trespasser or the turkey?
The turkey.
Okay.
The turkey.
So, let's clarify that.
Yeah, I'll clear that
Take
up
his
real quick.
kneecaps out.
I don't like trespassers, trust me, but I'm not going to shoot one of them.
Keith killed a guy.
And I go and I get to the trespassers, and they take off running. Where do you think they run?
Yeah.
Right towards the damn turkeys.
Ah,
And then down over the hill, and of course we didn't see the turkey spook, and I'm yelling and screaming and swearing and threatening, and anyway, one of the guys dropped his hat, so I still have his hat to this day, which I think is kind of funny, but nevertheless,
Mark Drury's written on the inside of it.
no, one Mark Drury,
mad calls on it.
Terry, let's get out of here.
He's actually a local business owner in
Oh, geez.
Mexico. Drury is who it was.
Uh-oh.
Whoops.
So, and I know who the guy is, and he knows I know. So anyway, long story short, Keith's, I get down there to Keith, and you know how Keith is. He goes, man, son of a buck, man, them damn turkeys. I'm like, hey, you know what? Let's just go to the north end of the farm. And I said, let's hunt for a few hours. I said, there's birds on the north end. Let this quiet down, and then we'll make a circle, and we'll see what happens. I said, these 3 turkeys were alone. They didn't have hens with them. I said, they may be all split up now. They may all be back together. I don't know. Long story short, we went up there and sat for an hour. Nothing went on. I told Keith, I said, let's go. Let's make a loop. I know how to get around there and get to where I think they may have went to. We got around there. We started slipping in. I said, we get to this little roadway. I said, I'm going to call. I said, they should be in that bottom over there unless they flew across the river. And I made a call. They all gobbled together about 150 yards away. We sat down, and 10 minutes later, Keith killed one of them, and I missed one of them. Nevertheless, this goes to show you, those turkeys were spooked bad. They got ran off by people.
Yeah.
But did they get run off by people, or did they get run off by a coyote? Did they get run off by a bobcat? Did you spook a group of deer through them?
Sure.
They don't really know. So I think what happens is, I went a long way about saying this, but keep in mind, they get spooked every day of their life. And unless you shoot at one of them and he flies over on the neighbors, you still have a chance. You still have a chance.
Yeah. That's hopeful.
Well, we got a question of the day today that's kind of along these lines. Before we got to depart with, because I know you're a busy guy, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. So I'm gonna real quick. We're gonna roll through this question of the day. We're kind of jumping around in order here, but the question of the day is probably brought to you by Sportsman Channel, your home for Winchester and Drury's natural born and everything red, wild, and blue.
Hi, my name is Tony, and I'm from Searcy, Arkansas.
Hi, Tony.
My question is this. Can a tom identify each hen by her calls? And can he pick up on a hunter's call when he uses a mouth call, maybe hunting that bird for a while, and the hunter shoot and miss? Could he recognize that call again by that same hunter? Thank you.
You've got to understand, in the South,
Things take time.
they do.
It's worth the wait.
So what do you think here? I mean, Tony has a good question, and I think probably many of us can relate to missing a bird and wondering if
you know who I am?
Yeah, hey, that was Matt again.
Well, here comes a this is going to be a 2-part answer. I think that there's definitely a recognizable vocal in a hierarchy of turkeys. If you've been around turkeys a lot, you'll especially in a roost situation, let's say really like right now, you go into a roost situation and slide in there in the dark, and you sit down and you've got a mixed flock. You've got 2 or 3 gobblers, you've got some jakes, and you've got some hens. And you'll hear those hens up there, and there's all kinds of different sounds. And all of a sudden, you'll hear this old hen show, and go, yeah, he'll answer her. Well, he knows who Joanne is. He understands who that is. He knows exactly, because that hen has probably been around there for several years. Now, there's also a bunch of Jenny hens that he don't know anything about. He's only been around them for a short period of time because they were born in the spring of the year. There's jakes that he doesn't know much about. There may be a subordinate bird or two that comes in that he doesn't know much about because they just moved into the area. So he doesn't know every turkey, but he knows certain ones, especially if that hen's been around 3 or 4 years, or there's been several hens around 3 or 4 years. But now a gobbler picking up on my sound, and me missing him and me being afraid to use that same call again on that turkey, absolutely not. Their memory as far as that, I think, is extremely, extremely short. And again, I just mentioned spooking turkeys. We had called to those turkeys. We called to them turkeys. Those turkeys were coming to our calls. Guys went in and spooked them. We looped around and set up in a different spot an hour later and used the same exact calls and called those turkeys in. Wouldn't have been no different if we shot at them. So I think that, do turkeys know some of the hens or other turkeys in their area? Absolutely. They grew up with them. They spend time around them every year. But now, do they have a memory of what you sounded like and they're going to shy away from your call if you shoot and miss or you spook him? Maybe for a few hours, but no, I think that you can go right back in there with the same pot call, the same mouth call, or anything else and call that turkey right back in. It all depends on his demeanor at the time. Now,
do you think that, but the age of the turkey, a mature tom, 4 or 5 year old tom, versus a 2-year-old, do you think there's a difference in their willingness to play ball again, so soon?
Yeah, I do. I do think that they are a little more what I would call woods wise. They're a little bit sharper about how things, they've lived 4 or 5 years. They've played this scenario. That's why sometimes it's so hard to get a gobbler to come to your call that's a big old long spurred turkey, especially in a certain position that you're in. You may not be set up exactly in his wheelhouse, and he's going to wait for that hen to come to him. He knows that's what's been going on since he was 2 years old. So he's played that game. But you're still going to catch him in that vulnerable state where, the willingness to breed overpowers his good intelligence. And so, again, I think we give,
like every good man,
all animals, and we give turkeys especially this credit of being super, super smart, when in reality they're just super, super shy and spooky and reluctant because of the scenario that they deal with, in life. Everything from the time they're hatched to the time they die, everything's trying to catch them, eat them, kill them, chase them down. I mean, they're dealing with things constantly, it's the difference between them and a grizzly bear is a whole lot. I mean, there's not much trying to kill a grizzly bear other than a human being or another grizzly, So it's a different deal, but I don't think we need to give them credit being super intelligent. I think we need to take it all in stride and just have that never give up attitude and just keep plugging away, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to make you successful. It's just like life.
I think that's a good point to end it on, because this guy, we went to a college like 300 level course here.
I was taking notes.
It's like, if we can't kill one this year, there's nothing but our problem.
We're dumb. We're not soaking up the wisdom that we're getting here.
That's right.
Yeah.
I don't think you guys will have a bit of problem.
Well,
I hope you're right.
Mark will take you. You'll be okay.
That's right. The saving grace is always being able to maybe go a Mark or Terry.
Well, Chris, we know you're a busy guy. We got a few more pieces here. You want to stick around, or you got a jet?
No, sure. I got time.
All right. Now, here's where we lost Matt Van Sice last time. Because
I don't know if he was pleased.
This is where our shenanigans happen.
Yes. So we've got the wildlife word. We do it every week. It's a multiple choice. Usually it centers around biology.
And trying to fool me and make me look stupid.
A little bit.
Continue.
So that's my job description, I think.
That's right.
Okay, the wildlife word this week is brought to you by Hunter Specialties, exclusive makers of the DoD signature series of turkey calls. Okay. Hen turkeys like big snoods, and they cannot A, lie, B, fly, C, cry, or D, die.
We always let the guest go first in this ridiculousness. So you're up, Chris.
Cry.
I'm going with cry, as much as I'd like to go a lie.
Lie is the best answer here.
Yeah.
And in research, it shows that longer snoods on gobblers tend to be more desirable on the part of hens. They like big snoods.
And they cannot lie.
That's right.
So you're telling me A is the answer.
That's right.
That was a tricky way of getting there, Tim.
I know.
Yeah.
You wordsmithed that one.
It would stand true if you're thinking about the song, but let's face it.
Oh, there's a song?
I'm thinking about turkey. Yeah, there's a song. I like big butts and I cannot
Oh
lie.
my goodness. Now we've gone over
PG-13 again.
So let me ask
Chris.
you, so how old are you? 22, 23?
I feel about 23. Yeah.
Well, he feels about 13, but he's actually 40-something.
43-ish.
Well, you're only 10 years behind me.
See, that would have been right in his wheelhouse, right? That song.
Yeah.
If Merle Haggard didn't sing it, I don't know what it is. Sorry.
That's
No, he
right.
didn't.
I would love to hear that version.
Before we get out of here, we got to do our shout out. So we got a thing called the Rack Pack over on Facebook, a private Facebook group that the listeners join in on. And every week, Tim lists a bunch of names of new people that join, and every week he throws in somebody that isn't a real name. So
fake.
All right. So we got Taylor Frederick, we got Paul Sarita, Isaac Hansen, Jordan Dean, Lynn Belvedere. I'm going with Lynn Belvedere.
That would be Mr. Belvedere, and you would be correct.
All right, I got one.
Although it really would make me happy if Mr. Belvedere was out there listening to our show.
Yeah, that would be great. He's got to be dead by now. Somebody's got to look this up for us. We need to have somebody,
A fact checker?
someone
to bring some
Although,
truth.
if we had a fact checker, most of the show would
The show would be interruptions.
Yeah.
And then for our shout outs, we've got little Curtis Geyer.
Curtis.
He says, had a blast on the show, guys. Thanks again. We need to do more of these, maybe next time at the Working Class Bow Hunter studio.
Yeah, it was a fun podcast. We got a lot of good feedback on that one.
And we can get our haircuts while we're there, too.
That's right.
Because the studio is an old barbershop.
That's right.
I like that.
Chris, have you ever been on their podcast, the Working Class Bow Hunter podcast?
No, I have not.
It's a good time. It's one worth doing if you ever have a chance. So, well, man, we appreciate you jumping on with us. We started the top of the show, which is kind of going through all the accomplishments over the years. I can't think of many guys in the industry that have had a bigger impact, literally from the inception of it to where we are today. And still, I don't know that folks out there necessarily know or understand just how much of an impact that guys like you've made. So I just want to say thanks on behalf of all the hunters out there for all the innovation, all the work and effort that you've put in over the years, because it has made our industry and made hunting a better place.
Well, I appreciate that, Matt. Thank you very much.
Yep,
I
definitely.
enjoyed it. I'm glad to be on, and wish everybody a great, successful turkey season and a safe one at that.
All right.
Yeah. I would do the same thing. And also let people know that we are on a mission to hit 1,000 Rack Pack followers by the end of the month.
Yeah, we just started this thing late in 2021, so we're racking them up, pun intended.
Ooh, wow, nice job. So go to Facebook, join the Rack Pack, and share the show. Leave us a review. Drop us a question of the day. You could win a DeerCast hat. There's just so many ways of winning. It's unbelievable.
Winning. All right, we better call her quits. Until next time, peace out.
See ya.
Temperatures are going to be dropping. Perfect conditions for the skinny field. Got to focus on those afternoon hunts. Northwest Tree Stand, 5 p.m.
It's the easiest decision you'll make this season. Get ahead of your game with DeerCast.
We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of DoD TV was brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's.